famous theory of Lamarckism was proposed by French naturalist Jean-Baptiste Lamarck in 1809. The theory of evolution is based on the principle that physical changes in organisms during their lifetime, such as greater development of an organ or a part through increased use, could be transmitted to their offspring. Lamarck recognized several ways in which the environment brings out changes in plants and animals, and it is significant to note that his attention was directed more particularly to the adaptive character of the response. According to Lamarck, new needs arise in animals as a result of a change in the environment. This leads to a new type of behavior involving new use of pre-existing organs. Their use leads to an increase in size or to other methods of functioning. Conversely, the disuse of other parts leads to their decline. It is the resulting material alterations that are inherited. The examples that Lamarck gives to illustrate his doctrine are illuminating. In animals, as stated above, a new environment calls forth new needs, and the animal seeks to satisfy them by making some effort. Thus, new needs engender new habits which modify the parts. The effects are inherited. For example, the giraffe, seeking to browse higher and higher on the leaves of trees on which it feeds, stretches its neck. This habit continued for a long time in all the individuals of the species. The giraffe's front limbs and neck have gradually grown longer. Birds that need to rest on the water, that is, to find their food, spread out their feet when they wish to swim. The skin becomes accustomed to being stretched and forms the webs between the toes. The horns of ruminants have resulted from the ruminants butting their heads together during combats. These examples, which appear naive in light of later discoveries, constitute some of the evidence on which Lamarck rested his theory. Some other examples include aquatic birds with webbed toes. Aquatic birds such as ducks are believed to have evolved from terrestrial animals. Extinction of limbs in snakes. The snakes are believed to have evolved from lizard-like ancestors that have two pairs of limbs. Flightless birds. It is believed that the ancestors of birds such as ostrich were able to fly. Due to some environmental changes, they had a substantial amount of food and were well protected. They stopped using their wings, and as a result, the wings became vestigial. Cave dwellers. The ancestors of the animals living in caves are believed to have a powerful eyesight. Due to living under continuous dark conditions, they lost their power to see. The theory had four main propositions. Inheritance of acquired characters. An individual acquires certain characteristics during its lifetime. These characters are inherited by their offsprings as well. He explained this with an example of a blacksmith. A blacksmith has strong arms due to the nature of their work. He proposed that any children a blacksmith conceives will inherit the development of strong muscles. Change through use and disuse. The organs which are used frequently by the organism develop, and the characteristics that are seldom used are lost in the succeeding generations. For example, a giraffe stretches its neck to eat leaves. A nervous fluid would flow into its neck and it enlarges. The organs which the organisms have stopped using would shrink with time. Organisms driven to greater complexity. As the organisms adapted to their surroundings, they became increasingly complex from the simpler forms. Lamarck believed in the spontaneous generation of life. Effect of environment and new needs. The environment influences all the organisms. A slight change in the environment brings about changes in the organism. This gives rise to new needs, which in turn produces new structures and changes the habits of the organisms. Lamarck proposed theories like the inheritance of acquired characters, use and disuse, increase in complexity, etc., whereas Darwin proposed theories like inheritance, different survival, species variation, and extinction. Darwin did not completely believe in his theory of acquired characters and proposed that the complexity in the organisms arise by the adaptation to the environment for several generations, whereas Lamarck proposed that complexity arises due to usage or disuse of particular characters. As the environment of an organism changes, so does his basic needs. The behavior of the individual changes that eventually change organ usage and organism development. This gradual change in the species in response to the environment is known as transmutation of species. Lamarckism was reformed by Giard and Cope by incorporating a few points of the opponents. This theory is known as neo-Lamarckism. The first proposition of the theory does not have any ground because there is no vital force in organisms which increases their body parts. As regards the second proposition, the environment can affect the animal, but it is doubtful that a new need forms new structures. The third proposition, the use and disuse of the organs, is correct up to some extent. The fourth proposition regarding the inheritance of acquired characters is disputed. The reason we no longer believe Lamarck's version is that genetic material is transmitted to the next generation through germ cells, and most acquired changes simply do not influence germ cells. They are to a large extent isolated from the environment. If this were not true, mice whose tails are cut off for many generations, as the scientist August Weismann tried to do, would be born without tails. Furthermore, Jewish and Muslim males would be born without foreskins. So, a modified version of the theory was formulated, which is called neo-Lamarckism. Neo-Lamarckism proposes that environment does influence an organism and change its heredity. At least some of the variations acquired by an individual can be passed on to the offspring. Internal vital force and appetency do not play any role in evolution. Only those variations are passed on to the offspring which also affect germ cells, or where somatic cells cause germ cells to multiply. Evidences in favor of the inheritance of acquired characters support neo-Lamarckism. That was all for this video. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel Explified. Check out our channel for more interesting content.